this is a great experience. I seem to be experiencing latency on my microphone, just on the PA system. I'm not sure how that's working, but it's, I'm going to get used to it.
Your lips are the same.
I think that's what it is. It's a new OS, I'm afraid. Anyway, welcome everybody to this panel. We're very happy to have you here. We have an amazing group of folks here to talk with today, and we want to get to your questions that you have. But first, I think it's a good idea for everybody to get to know who our panelists are. So we're going to go through one at a time, and I'll introduce them, and I think everybody here has a clip to show. This is kind of like a late night talk show. Everybody has a clip. Then we'll get them to just talk a little bit about where they came from and what they've been doing lately. And then we'll talk a bit, have some questions, and get questions from you guys. And as we do this, I want to ask you questions as well, so we kind of have a feel for who the audience is. But I think we might first introduce everyone to you, and then kind of pull the audience, and hopefully we'll fill in. So Andrew Barnabas, let's start with Andrew Barnabas. Shouldn't we? Actually, give him a round of applause just to begin with. We'll do that a lot just to keep the endorphins going. Just after starting his career in writing music for games, our first panel member started a game label called Dens Design in 1991, working as one half of the British composing duo Bob and Barn. You're the Barn, right?
I am the Barn.
Those two things, yes. He has continued to work in games while expanding to films, TV, and music. So, once again, give a nice round of applause to Andrew Barnes. Shall we take a look at your clip first?
Why not?
Or would you like to set this up?
What the clip was? Okay. This is from a game called BIME, which was released a couple of years ago. It's the trailer, just sort of showcasing what kind of, it was kind of a first-person, more typical ankle shooter, who kind of worked together as a team. And it's a company in LA, which is quite a CG trailer, which we can use it for. So yes, enjoy.
So, could you talk just a little bit, actually, if you want to fill in anything from my bio that we just talked about, that'd be great. But I also think, you know, taking a look at a trailer like that for an interactive game, can you talk maybe just a moment about the difference between working on linear versus non-linear projects?
Okay, well, I started writing music games back in 1990 on Commodore Amiga. Anyone who was old enough to remember that, for sure. And so I witnessed it from literally from the original bedroom coding days. One guy in his room making games, and it slowly expanded and went into the office and so on and so forth. I was freelance for the first 5 years whilst I was at university. I then went to work for a games company in-house, because at that point you could have in-house composers, like they had in film and TV. And for me that was by far the best way of doing it, because at that point you really were getting involved in the trenches with the rest of the team. Because up until that point you're very removed from the process. You get the call and say, I've got a game, I'd like to go and score it, you go and see the game, but you're not really involved, you don't really know the intricacies of how problems they encounter during the development process. But whilst being an in-house composer meant that I literally was there working on the project for sometimes in the case of 2 or 3 years, witnessing the whole evolution of it and exploring the musical styles. And the reason I went to work for a company in Cambridge because they built by far the best recording studio I'd ever seen for a games company. They spent about £1 million on this, and back in 1995 they had 32-track Pro Tools. I mean, I was coming from editing tape at university. And so I went there, the company were always Sony in 1997, I went all the way up, I run the music and sound department for Sony Cambridge and Moderador games from the PlayStation, which Cambridge came for me. And it was a very interesting time because at that point, whilst games development, whilst technology was slowly improving, I went from floppy disks to CD-based mediums. I was writing music on chip music for stuff which was being generated by the sound chip of the class I was working for. So then recording stuff in studios and slowly going into the budget was increasing to going, fine, start recording orchestras and so on and so forth. So I witnessed the whole sort of the rise of the importance of games music. And also, I also felt that it became one where the music became of a similar production value to that of film and TV. Whereas I would say, probably 10 years ago, I felt that there was a lot of stigma attached. People can tell people you're a games composer, and they think, well, you're a Mario blip blob Tetris kind of music. No, I'm actually recording orchestras. And then witnessing it come back in the last 4 or 5 years to see now we're back to the bedroom coders with the whole explosion of mobile and the Facebook and browser-based games. So I've witnessed a sort of coming full circle. And now the games industry is polarised from being these enormous, massive AAA titles. Was one of them. And a few games in the middle there, and a lot of games in the mobile and browser space. And so you kind of, for me, it's come full circle. What I've learned through the process of doing that is that the skills of writing music I learned whilst writing music games, I've now transposed into working for film or TV. And whereas a few years ago, people were like, you're not good enough to write film or TV. Now they've really embraced us. And I was going, oh, come on, talk to us, we love it. And I've worked on TV shows and films because of the scores I've written for games from the 90s and PlayStation that guys growing up with, and go, oh, that guy's got music for my film. So it's a really weird way of coming around to it, but I find it very interesting and very enlightening to go from working, now I do less working games, and do work in film and TV. So to answer your question, what's the differences in liking for linear media? Well, it's linear media. I think games are technically more involved. You have that. I'm not even going to go into the interactive STEM writing stuff as well. They take longer to do because the amount of music you're producing for a game is in excess of 2 or 3 times the amount of music you're producing for a film and TV show. And that's obviously incredibly technically demanding. So I found that our games I've worked on for 2 or 3 years, sometimes more, whereas I'm a scorer filmmaker somewhere in 3 weeks. So it's a very different set of skills you have. But the production, but the techniques of writing music and composition techniques I've learned from games, I found that people in film and TV are now beginning to embrace. Where a few years ago, I really felt that they were much more against that. But now they're like more entertaining.
Yeah. Well, excellent, excellent. Charles, let's go to you next, right?
Thanks.
After a long run as a broadcaster with BBC Radio 1, our next panel member now makes mobile games, specializing in entertainment IP. He is the author of the Concise Dictionary of Freemium, and his recent projects include work with Disney, X Factor, and ABC, just to name a few. So please welcome me in joining Dr. Charles Kriel.
So I actually have a presentation rather than a video. It's a little bit more boring and a little bit more formal, so I'm going to have to get up and go do that.
Excellent. You're a doctor.
What's your problem?
No. I would expect you to talk a little bit. I tried to be a little more formal.
All right. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. So the email address is up there for a reason, and that's mostly because I have written this dictionary, and it says a lot about what it is that I do. So I used to be with the BBC. I'm a creative and maker at heart, and then I lost so much money making games. Oh my God, I've lost so much money that I decided I needed to learn the business model of it. And learning the business model of it, I then wrote this dictionary about freemium and free-to-play. So, is there anybody who doesn't know what freemium and free-to-play is? Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so you download a free app, and the business that I work in is that you download a free app, and I have to make you love that app so much that even though you can play the game all the way to the end, you will still give me money. Right, and it's a very difficult space. It's really hard marketing space. It has a lot to do with psychology and the way that we seduce people into the space that we live in. We'll get around to the music thing in a moment. The way that I learned about games and how they work is that I grew up on the circus. And my father was a carny, and he used to run games out of a trailer. And I would work beside him running those games as well. So my dad taught me how to spot the compulsive gambler, spot the big spender, pull them in, get them to spend money, despite being entertained already. And so all of this comes from a certain kind of instinct, aside from the way that what I might happen to have learned at university. This is actually a carnival game. The conceit of this game is that you should come and play our game and try to make a combination of a number from this. You're gonna throw some things out on the table. The interesting thing about this game is you can't. There's no possible, so there's an epic win number that goes along with this board. But there's no possible way to combine these numbers to reach that epic win number. But what I might do is I might tell you, you won, and you're not going to argue with me. So this is how carnival games work in general. This is where games have gone at the moment. So what I keep hearing people say right now is that there's no budget left for games. That there's no budget left for music games, that all of the money is going down all of the time, that there's an emphasis now on A/B testing, there's a lot of biometric testing going on in games, that music has just become the background of it, completely averse to what you just said, where music is going out right to the front of games, but in fact, I'm seeing a completely different side of games myself. So what I do now is I exec produce games. I try to raise the money for them. I try to help put the financial model together for the games, and then I try to make them happen in the field. I work with the designers on the game design. I try to help lead the creative so that we can make the best game that we possibly can. But at the same time, we're trying to make the most profitable game that we possibly can. So the world where I live, 12 months ago, there was a game that came out called CSR Racing. CSR Racing was made by a 5-man team in Brighton. Really small group of people. It's almost like starting a band. Let's 5 of us get together and let's make a game. And they were doing 12 million a month from month 1. All right, so that's the money they were doing. But that was 12 months ago. Now, this year, what we're all excited about is a game called Puzzles and Dragons. Puzzles and Dragons is one of the simplest games you'll ever encounter. The play is incredibly low. We have this thing called churn, which is the number of people who leave the game, and then we have what we acquire. They are managing to acquire over churn 1 million users a month. So they have a sustainable play base and have had for a year, and they are doing $5 million a day. All right, that's $150 million a month. They've done $1.5 billion in the past year. So when people talk about budgets are falling for games, they're looking at the wrong games, right? They're focused on consoles, and I have nothing to do with consoles, so all I really care about is the phone. I only care about mobile gaming. All my focus is looking at Japan and South Korea and seeing what's happening there, because what happens there is going to happen here next. What this means is there's enormous money for gaming out there. And whatever models you've been working on as a composer, working with games companies, those models are kind of dead. Everything is starting over now. We're ripping up the games industry as it existed, and we're creating a new games industry. These deals are just on the table at the moment. Anytime you go to the table, you have to go, there's no precedent, and you have to start over again. Whether it's about licensing pre-existing IP that you have that might be going into the game, or composing something completely different. And that's really what you came here to say, is that what was there is gone, and what's coming is awesome, and there's more money.
That sounds great. Give him a hand. Thank you. That was very enlightening. Our next panel member is a seasoned composer and sound designer who had a vision of bringing together a group of artists in order to produce cutting-edge creative audio. In 2007, he founded La Hacienda, a music and audio post-production house with a diverse portfolio of award-winning work. So please join me and welcome Brian de Oliveira. I sent that along. Yeah.
I guess we can start with video, and then we'll try to bit about it. finished actually just about 3 weeks ago. And what you're hearing here is actually the culmination of months of basically trying to come up with a new approach to how we can make it folky yet contemporary. So that was a huge challenge. When I first started basically talking with people at View Molecule, it's interesting because they wanted something that really hadn't been done before in this context. So that's what I do basically. I specialize, and I basically, with every project that I work on, I will really try to immerse myself in that world. And that's a huge thing. As a composer for games, you really have to play the game as much as possible. You have to play games, period. And basically, like, I went as far as buying instruments, and I spent weeks just researching instruments, sleeping with medieval music, in my dreams. And then I came up with this, and they're like, that's it, that's the sound, So it's interesting because these days you can really, creatively you can do so much more with games, and it's a wide open field, like just as he was mentioning, in a sense, yeah, the models have changed. It's changing constantly, and for me, it's funny because as opposite to Andrew here, basically I came from a background of music and for television, and for me, when I first got into games, it was a huge discovery. Like, I was allowed to basically do what I do the best. And I didn't play a clip before. Sorry guys, I'm a bit nervous. This is the first time talking in front of a crowd like this. Also with another game that I did with Papa, basically I was allowed to not only do the music, but also actually integrate the sounds into the game engine. And since I had done this before, we were allowed to do anything basically. Like, there's no limitations in what you can do these days in terms of the implementation. So that's something that you have to think about. You have to, for me, it's about creating an experience and telling stories, and in a sense, it's just the same as doing music for film. You're able to do this in a game, just the same. So, yeah, that's where I come from.
Great, fantastic. Cool. Well, our final fourth member of our panel, we just met, and he comes from Brazil, but has lived in London for quite a while now. He has 14 years of video game music and sync experience at PlayStation, Activision, and currently at Nimrod Productions. And we have with us today Sergio Pimentel. Please welcome Sergio. Should we play your clip first, or would you like to set it up?
I'm the only, well, not the only non-composer on the panel, but I'm one of the two or three non-composers on the panel, but I work with composers. So yeah, let's fire up a game actually that our in-house composer Mark Cannon has just finished doing for PlayStation over in the US, and this is a game that will be out in February, I believe, for PlayStation 4.
Over and over again.
Maybe you should stop arresting your brother over and over and over
You think
again.
this is a joke?
No, I
Is this how
don't.
you want to leave your mark on the world, huh? No. For all we know, we may be able to pass you through their security, because you're not a normal, violent terrorist. Seem to be getting the hang of your symptoms, right?
Of course, the only downside being that, no, can't think of anything. This is pretty freaking awesome.
Alright, I got this whole thing figured out. You hit the town, and then you swing by the Space Needle, always wanted to see it, and then we're back home to save some lives.
You realize when we hit the town, there's a fair chance the town's gonna, get back.